All right, what is up, my friends? Welcome. Full set review. Dungeons and Dragons. Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. We're on green. We did white. We did blue. We did black. Now we're doing green. Oh, we did red too, also, I guess. Missed that one. And full set review. Constructed, limited, every single card. All right, we're gonna rock and roll. We do best in show. We do Admiral Akbar, our new feature here. And anything you miss on YouTube, definitely check it out. We do a separate video for each color. And got 10 new brews up. A matter of fact, gifting subs. Thanks, appreciate that. And let's just get going here. Let's just get going. I want to remind everyone also real fast that I am commentating tomorrow. I'll be in the commentary booth for the Stream League 5 on Charizard James' channel. Look for that. And look for my article on CoolStuffInc.com, my 10 new brews article. All right, love y'all. Let's go. First card is Boulet, a common green card, 4 mana for a 3/3. Beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, put a counter on Boulet. That's like actually a pretty solid common, honestly. It only cares about a creature dying, period. Isn't going to be yours, isn't going to be theirs. And frankly, in games of limited, creatures die. And it's not that hard to play this on a turn where a creature died and have it immediately become a 4/4. And a 4/4 for 4 is pretty good. So I like this card a lot. This feels like a very, very solid common in green for your draft deck. Yeah, there was a card like this in M21 also, correct? And that card was very good if I recall correctly. So love cards at scale. Love cards that don't really need to do much to be good. Very solid draft common. Like it a lot. Like it a lot. Up next is Bull's Strength. 2 mana instant. +2/+2 and trampled on a turn and untap it. Now, I don't love 2 mana tricks because they're just kind of clunky usually. And +2/+2 isn't great. But I love trample and I love untapping. I think this card does just enough that I'm reasonably okay with it. Giving your creature trample when you attack. So yeah, my 5/5 comes in, or my 4/4, whatever. They block with a 4/3. I get the trample over, deal some extra damage. That feels really, really good. Predator Strike was one of my favorite cards back in Mirrodin Draft. That's +3/+3 and trample. And Run Amok, of course, was very, very good in the last format as well. So trample is really, really good. This is long and short of it. I don't want to use this card defensively that often because, excuse me, I don't want to do this card that often. I don't want to use this card defensively that often because using pump spells defensively is a way to get blown out fairly often. But the fact that the option is there is pretty cool. Mostly would want to be using this card offensively, but fine trick. Wouldn't want a ton of them, but definitely very, very reasonable. Up next is Choose Your Weapon. 3 mana for an instant, and you can either double target creature's power and toughness to end a turn, or do a 5 to a flyer. I mean, obviously has some sort of combo potential. You know, if you use this with like the Fury card or whatever, things like that. You know, doubling power is definitely a real thing. Reasonable trick. You know, I have a 3/3, this is basically +3/+3. And the fact this also can kill flyers is nice too. There are a lot of good dragons in this set, in limited. So that's pretty sweet, honestly. That's pretty sweet. So I like this card. Solid limited card. I like it mostly for the archery half. You'll probably end up casting the plus ability more often than the archery ability. But when you cast the archery ability, it's going to be super impactful. Like super impactful, top level kind of card kind of stuff. So card seems good to me. You know, modal spells are good when both modes are good. And I think you're going to kill a lot of dragons with this card, honestly. So solid draft card for sure. Up next is Circle of Dreams Druid. Green for a 2/1. Gaius Cradle. Add a green for each creature you control. This is your like pretty typical mega high upside, super fragile, hard to cast 3-drop. Because the mana is so bad in standard, and because the main dual land is a pathway land that does not always tap for green, this card is basically only for mono green decks. And it's just such a high variance card. You know, if this card lives, it's insane. Obviously, it's Gaius Cradle, but it's only a 2/1. I don't think this card has much of a prospect in standard. Obviously not while Stomp is legal, but even past that, like, I don't know what you're getting paid off for so much mana. The opportunity cost is so high. It's a 2/1 for 3. It's just so hard to cast. You know, this kind of card is like, I mean, you know, it can work really well. The ceiling's pretty high, but all in all, I'm not very impressed with it. And then in limited, this card is really hard to cast. If you're like super heavy green, sure. And then what are you even sinking the mana into? I can find this card being in a spot where you're playing limited and you play this card on turn 5 or 6, and then it's turn 7 or 8, and you have like 16 mana and just nothing to do with it. What are you doing in limited? There are some activated abilities in limited, but overall, not very impressed. So I think this card's, very flimsy, super high upside, kind of a win more card for sure. Maybe in historic elves, or pioneer elves, but Elvish Archdruid is such a better card for just so many reasons. So not really that impressed. Up next is Circle of the Moon Druid. 3 mana for a 2/4. However, on your turn, it's a 4/2. This card's sweet. I mean, I think 4/2s for 3 are pretty fine and limited. Let me rephrase that, actually. So, I actually don't like this card. I thought for a second. I like 4/2s in limited because they block really well. You play a 4/2. Occasionally, your opponent's mana screwed, and you just beat the crap out of your opponent with it. But most of the time, you play it, and you can block their 4-drop with it. It trades up pretty well. However, it's not very good on offense because they can block it with their 2-drop. So the 4/2 stats tend to trade up on defense and down on offense. Therefore, this card being a 4/2 on your turn and a 2/4 on their turn isn't really doing what I want my 4/2 to do. So, not really that big of this card. The good news is that it does have 4 power to help trigger your what's it called? Pack attack, whatever the mechanic is. That's kind of cool, but this feels like filler to me. This feels kind of like filler to me. I'm not really very excited about this card. Yeah, not very excited. Compelled Duel. 2 mana for a sorcery. Target gets +3/+3 on the turn and must be blocked this turn of Egel. These kind of cards are like, okay. Obviously, this is like a pseudo-removal spell. The thing is that you're not choosing what blocks it. So they can just throw like a token in front of this thing or whatever, their worst creature. I don't like cards like this. A card like this is just getting asked to blown out, to get blown out. You play this, they bounce your creature, you kill your creature or whatever. If this thing forced a particular block, I'd be much more interested in it. But it's just too narrow, I think. Occasionally, if your opponent has one untapped creature and it's good, it can kill them. But yeah, it's awful when you're behind. This card's pretty bad. Up next is Dire Wolf Prowler. 3 mana for a 2/2. You pay 2, give +2/+2, and haste when of turn. Solid common here. Pretty solid common. This is effectively a 5 mana 4/4 haste, which is pretty cool. You don't need to pump it. It's just like that Root Walla effect, which is pretty good. And then the fact that it has haste is cool. It's a solid card. Solid creature. Nothing crazy. Just good aggro creature, realistically. Up next is Druid class. 2 mana for an enchantment. It's a class enchantment. Chapter 1, or the base level, is whenever a land enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. It's kind of cool. You pay 3 mana, and it's exploration. You can play extra lands. And then on 5 mana for level 3, you get to make target land you control a creature with haste and power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control. So, kind of a cool payoff, honestly. The first 2 parts, gaining life, you play lands is kind of cool. Playing extra lands is a cool ability that's pretty hard to use effectively. Most decks can't make use of that effect that well. It does play well with Quandrix Apprentice, which is kind of cool, but that's kind of weird. And then the third ability is sweet. It's kind of cool. This is also a threat. And, a pretty large threat at that. But all in all, I don't think that this is doing what you want it to be doing. 4 mana or 5 mana for an exploration effect is a lot. And gaining a little bit of life here and there is kind of too. So all in all, this is a miss for me. I think if this card cost 1 green and level 2 was 2 mana, this card would be bonkers good. But I think it's way too clunky. And then in limited, this card's just not very good. So not very exciting. Which honestly fine. Too much ramp stuff anyway. Up next is Eliwick Trumblestum, the Venturer. Green 2 for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. +1 to venture. -2, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You can reveal a creature, put it in your hand. If it's legendary, gain 3 life. This card is cool. We played a venture deck in 10 New Brews, and this card's pretty impressive. The ability to venture over and over and over again is pretty awesome, and it does so at a plus, which is great. It's not like drawing a card exactly, but it is, an effect that kind of gets going. Gets a good grind going. You can fight card advantage. Pretty cool. I know people are down on this card. I'm pretty up on this card, actually. I actually like this card. I think it's pretty solid. The minus ability is good. A lot of the good venture cards are legends anyway, so the life gain comes into play fairly often. The Bant venture that we played in 10 New Brews was pretty impressive. Probably won't be great until rotation, but was solid. And yes, it also reminds me of the Urza's head, like unglued Planeswalker, where you choose like a random ability, because you don't know what the plus is going to do. It could be scry 1, it could be make a goblin, it could be put a counter on something, like you'll have some choice in the matter, but like it could be anything basically. It's kind of funny. So yeah, definitely think that the card's really cool. I think this card's a bit underrated right now, and this card will get a lot better post rotation. But it is very parasitic. Obviously, there's not going to be much venture stuff beyond this set. So it's narrow, but I think it's good at what it does. In limited, busted. Just totally busted in limited. So it's cool. And the emblem says, you get an emblem with creatures you control have trample and haste, and get +2/+2 for each differently named dungeon you completed. It cares about the names. So it can only ever get +6/+6. Because it says named dungeon. So that's also a nice top end. Because part of the problem with the venture deck too was that we were venturing, we were like grinding well, but not necessarily closing the game out. So the ultimate there is pretty reasonable, honestly. So I like this card. I'm kind of high on it, honestly. Up next is Eltugard Ranger. 5 mana for a 4/1 reach. And when it comes into play, you make a 2/2 wolf. Very bizarre card. Honestly, the stats are reasonable. The 4/1 can block dragons pretty well, and just is a reasonable blocker in general. Honestly, more of a good defensive card in that this like really stabilizes the board pretty well. The 4/1 can block a flyer, 2/2 can block a random 2/2. It's a weird card. I don't know what deck particularly wants this card. It seems fine. Not sure. Not a card that I'm sad to have in my draft deck, but I'm not sure what deck wants it, basically. Up next is Find the Path. 3 mana for a enchantment aura enchant land. It's a ramp spell that ventures once, and 3 mana ramp is always kind of anyway. Only adds green. It's no mana fixing here. Venturing is good. I don't know if the venture deck wants to play a ramp spell though, because the thing is that when you're venturing, you're sort of like sacrificing a bit of board control for a progressing element. And when you're playing creatures, that's fine because your board is progressing. But this doesn't progress your board in either way. So I'm not super big on this one, honestly. It's okay. And in limited, I don't think your green decks are super interested in venturing. I think it's more of like a white, black, blue kind of thing. So I think this card's pretty unimpressive overall. Up next is Froghemoth. Whatever.
It's a trap.
I think this is a trap, folks. This card looks pretty cool because it does things that are close to what other good cards do. It has trample and haste. It's a 4/4. So it looks kind of like Questing Beast a little bit. And then it has the Scavenging Ooze ability. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile up to that many target cards from their graveyard. And it gets a counter for each creature card exiled this way, and you get 1 life. So basically, it Scavenging Oozes their graveyard when it hits them. The problem is, this is a 4/4 haster for 5. That's a limited quality stat line. And not every deck has creatures. On turn 5, there might not even be that many creatures in graveyards. So it's just like not super exciting. I don't think this card scales very well. Like, why are we ever playing this card in Constructed and not playing Goldspan Dragon or Questing Beast? I'm just not super enthused about this card. I think at 4 mana, this card's very exciting. I think even at 4 mana as a 3/3 or a 4/3, this card would have been pretty exciting. At 5 mana, I'm just not super exciting. Right. Is there a real chance there's like a bigger creature in play already, or the board's already gummed up? There's no guarantee this even hits. And the thing is that against decks where the board is likely to be empty, it's pretty unlikely they'll have creatures in their graveyard because they're playing like planeswalkers and spells and stuff too. So I like the fact it's sort of a main deck graveyard hate kind of card, but I think overall this card is pretty unimpressive, and we'll see very little play in standard. It's trap, folks. It's trap. However, in limited, this card's freaking great because a 4/4 haste for 5 at limited is like pretty good, and then has upside as well. So very, very solid draft card. Probably first pickable. But constructed, I'm not really seeing it. Thanks, Akbar. Appreciate it. Of course, Admiral Akbar is our new feature here on my set reviews to go along with the best in show. We now have Akbar pop in and say it's a trap. Up next is Null Hunter. It's a 2-mana 2/2 with Pack Tactics. Whenever it attacks, if you attack with creature's power 6 or greater, you put a counter on it. This is a premium level aggressive 2-drop. Once you get that first counter on this card, you're way ahead. And if this card scales even more than that, I think you're in great shape. So very solid 2-drop for your aggressive deck. Just a solid aggro 2-drop. Not every deck will want this card, but if your deck is aggressive, your deck is pack tacticking. That's a word. Very, very solid. Very, very solid. Like it a lot. Up next is the Green Dragon. Are we hobbits? Are we going to the Green Dragon? Is Mary here? Is Pippin here? No! Rosie Cotton manning the kegs. Green Dragon is a 6-mana 4/4 dragon with Poison Breath. Enters the battlefield until end of turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt damage, destroy it. That's a pretty powerful effect. That allows you to attack all of your crappers into their good creatures, which is very, very nice for aggressive stuff. Aside from also just being a 4/4 for flyer for 6, which in green is pretty good. You know, it's a little undersized for what you want for 6 mana, but very, very solid. Very, very solid. So I like this card. I like this card a lot, actually. I think it's better if you're aggressive. Kind of like the Black Dragon is much better in a slow controlling deck. This card is much better in a more aggressive deck. I like it. I like it. Solid curve topper aggro deck. For those asking me in chat, I have never played D&D in my life. I have no idea. So, the fact this also has flying is pretty cool too. Green decks don't often get large evasive creatures, so it's a nice curve topper. I think this is one of the better dragons. Like it a lot. Good solid draft card. Up next is Hill Giant Herd Gorger, and it's a Hill Giant that's not a freaking 3/3. That part sucks. But the reality is, this card is quite good. We've seen this card before in the last few sets. Usually it's a 6/6 and it gains 4 life. And this exchanges 1 point of life gain for 1 point of power. It's honestly arguable what's better, you know, because the power, it's more of a defensive card than anything else. And kind of like defends and then mops up. But this is a very good limited card. This is more for your kind of slower, grindier decks, and I'm not sure if the green decks of this format will facilitate that because they seem to be more aggressive. But if you're looking for a stabilizing curve topper, this is your card. This is your card. I like it. Way better than Hill Giant. Yeah, I mean, I guess that is true. That is true. It's a better draft card than Hill Giant, but just saying, you know, it's just Hill Giant's kind of like a thing in Magic. It's a little weird, but yeah, solid curve topper. You know, this does play well with the venture. The venture ramp spell. So if you're like green white, you're venturing, you're buying time, and then you're popping off with this card. Pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. It is contextual as far as the format goes, though, so don't go crazy with this card. Up next is Hunter's Mark. This is the blue, anti-blue hate card. 4 mana for an instant. It costs 3 less to cast if it targets a blue permanent you don't control. It can't be countered, and the creature you control gets +1/+1, and then deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. Sort of like a, what's that card called? Hunt the Weak. It's a Hunt the Weak that's really good against blue. Now, of course, this is different than the other hosers because it requires you to have a creature in play and requires your blue opponent to also be playing creatures, which makes this a much worse card for constructed, but solid limited card for sure. I mean, Hunt the Weak's already a fine limited card. Occasionally in limited, if this card is cast for 1 mana against a blue opponent, that's really, really good. So solidly high pick and limited. You're probably starting this card a lot of the time anyway, but if you are sideboarding it, it's insane, a portion of the time. But yeah, a little disappointing compared to the other ones. Not quite Veil of Summer, am I right? Not quite Veil of Summer. But yeah, so it's all right. It's all right. Inspiring Bard is next, and 2 mana for a 3/3. Now that's a freaking hill giant, all right? I know a hill giant when I see one. That's a hill giant. That's a hill giant. And comes into play, you can either give a creature +2/+2, or you can gain 3 life. Both are reasonable, honestly. If you're aggressive, this is a decent card to cast on turn 4. And then if you're defensive, a 3/3 that gains 3 is decently defensive. So it's kind of a filler card. I don't think that there's any deck that desperately wants this card. But if you need a 4-drop in your aggressive or defensive deck, this card does the job reasonably well. So filler level, probably your 23rd playable, but also not embarrassing either. Up next is Instrument of the Bards. 1 green, legendary artifact. Beginning of your upkeep, you may put a harmony counter on Instrument of the Bards. Tap 4 and this to search your library for a creature with mana value equal to the number of harmony counters on Instrument of the Bards. Reveal it, put it into your hand. That card's legendary, create a treasure token, then shuffle. This card kind of blows, honestly. You got to play it turn 1, sort of like an Aether Vial. But all it does is search for creatures and not give you your mana back in any way at all. If it put the card in play or something like that, we'd be talking about a serious card here. But 5 mana to tutor for a creature into your hand with a lot of hoops jump through is not exciting at all. Not exciting at all. And then if it's legendary and make a treasure, sure, I guess. But if it was also you agree in an X, where X is the number of harmony counters or something like that, so it would scale up as time goes on. But yeah, this card's pretty embarrassing. Yeah, pretty embarrassing. Commander, sure. Commander card, sure. It's the default thing for cards that are too expensive to do anything useful. But yeah, pretty unexciting card. Up next is Intrepid Outlander. 2 mana for a 2/3 reach. It's got Pack Tactics. And the Pack Tactics is to venture into a dungeon. Really, really good draft card. 2/3 reach for 2 is already a solid limited card. The rate stats there are reasonable. And then triggering Pack Tactics and limited is going to be pretty easy to do. And this is a possible venture every turn. Super high quality draft common. Super, super high quality. I could see green-white venture being a thing in limited for sure. Super cool card. Super cool card. Constructed, probably not, but limited, sweet.
Hey, Jim, you got time for the Clayic coming up. And you to play some blue MN for me.
What's up, Manus? You tell Wizards of the Coast to stop releasing a set every month, and then maybe I'll have time to do your deck live. All right? That's what you got to do. Thanks to Resub. Appreciate that. Yeah, this card seems really bad. Not even a commander card. It just seems awful. So, up next is the Loathsome Troll. 5 mana for a 6/2. Pay 4 mana when it's in your graveyard to roll a d20. 1 to 9 goes top of your library. 10 to 19 goes to your hand. Natural 20 goes to the battlefield tapped. This is a solid draft card, honestly. It's a little clunky. It trades well, though. And then in a longer game, it just keeps coming back over and over again. I think you're pretty unhappy if this goes on top of your deck. But if it goes to your hand, I think you're very happy. And if you hit the 20, it's insane. But solid card. I think this card is better on defense than on offense because it blocks very well, but trades with 2-drops. So if you're a slow, grindy green deck, this card seems reasonable. It is a 6-power creature, so it's Pack Tactics by itself. But yeah, all in all, it's an okay card. Probably a lot better in sealed too, where it's just like this card will not relent. Eventually, this card will get them, But the question is, do you have time to accomplish that task or not? So that's the troll. Up next is Long Rest. Green, X. Sorcery. Return X target cards with different mana values from your graveyard to your hand. If 8 or more cards are returned this way, your life total becomes your starting life total. So, sort of like Seasons Past, but much more expensive and much harder to use. And that card was never really that good anyway. So, This is actually an actual commander card, probably. But yeah, this is way too expensive to do anything relevant. We talked about the blue card draw spell for 6 that can draw like 5 cards. You can't spend a card like this and not affect the board. And if you manage to return 8 cards and go back to 20 life, I don't even know what's happening in the game Magic that you're playing, honestly. Because you ain't playing Magic anymore. You're playing some other game. All right? Yeah, not a very good card. Not a very good card. And limited, I mean, if your deck is really slow, sure. But pretty bad. Up next is Lurking Roper. 3 mana for a 4/5 that will not untap during your untap step. Whenever you gain life, untap it. The important thing to note here is that this card does not come in tapped. So you can just play this card. It's a honkin' chonkin' 4/5 on defense. And then you can just not attack with it if you can't gain life. So as a 4/5 wall for 3, if you're playing a defensive green deck that wants to venture and have to take time to do things, this card seems great. And then if you're the life gain deck, this card seems bonkers good and limited. 4/5 for 3 is great. It can play both sides of the ball. You can attack with it, then tap it again, which is great. Super solid draft card. Constructed, probably not, but I wouldn't be insanely surprised if it saw a combo. I mean, saw play in constructed. A 4/5 is pretty big, not as big as Love Shark Beast, obviously, but that will rotate eventually. So, but yeah, great draft card. Yeah, so cool card. Neverwinter Dryad, 1 green for a 1/1 Dryad creature. You can pay 2 and sack it to get a basic forest. So it's a slow rampant growth that's vulnerable and only gets forests. If there's a ramp deck in the format, I mean, that can play this reliably on turn 1, it's fine. It's fine. It just triggered the graveyard death things in green black, which is kind of cool. It's not overtly powerful, but it's a card. It's it's fine. It does a job reasonably well. If your deck wants that job done, you can do it, but it's not like an overtly powerful card in any way at all. But it's cool. Up next is Ochre Jelly. Green X, Ooze, Trample. Comes into play with X 1/1 counters on it. So, worse than Stone Cold Serpent. Split. When the jelly dies, if it had 2 or more counters on it, create a token that's a copy of it at the beginning of the next end step. The token enters the battlefield with half that many counters on it rounded down. So it splits. Then it can split again. I mean, that's cute. Now, it dies. If it had 2 more... Hold on. I gotta freaking read this card. I'm sorry. If it had 2 or more counters on it, create a token. That's a copy of it at the next end step. Okay, so it just splits into half of itself. It doesn't make 2 of them. Right, it just comes back at half the size. So that is very, very cool with Conclave Mentor. Because I believe it would just come back the same size every time. Yeah, I don't know why that was called split. I read the word split, and I was like, oh, okay, so it's going to split into 2, right? That's like an obvious thing to happen if it splits, right? No, not quite. Doesn't split at all, just like shrinks. So it dies, it gets smaller. It split off from the part that died. Half-life, sure, perfect. Half-life sounds great. That's great. I like Half-Life a lot. Let's do that. Somebody call Wizards. But yeah, I mean, if you have a Conclave Mentor in play or a Winding Constrictor in play, it is immortal, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, great draft card because this card just scales really well anyway. This card is probably too cute for constructed, but yeah, definitely a really good limited card for sure. It's got a lot of words on it. I'm tired of reading this card. Old Nawbone. Old Nawbone is not that good. 7 mana, legendary, flying, 7/7 dragon, which is, whatever. Whatever creature you control deals damage to a player, make that many treasure tokens. That's not really the best payoff for your 7 mana mythic dragon. You want your 7 mana mythic dragon to freaking win the game. Lore holds, cast spells for free, have haste, Do some stuff. And this doesn't do anything. You know, you have 7 mana. We'll give you some more mana if you can have creatures in play, be in a good board position, and deal damage to your opponent. Yeah, this card sucks. There's no two ways about it.
So you get nothing.
Yeah, you give this card haste, sure, we're talking. But yeah, this card just sucks. I'm sorry, folks. I don't know who old Nawbone is in D&D lore, but this card blows. Yeah. Up next is Owlbear, which is a 5 mana trample 4/4. Comes into play, draw a card. This has got to be the best green common. We've seen this card a lot now in the last few sets. Seraph's Packmate. They just keep printing these cantrip green creatures, and they're almost always the best green common. And Seraph's Owlbear. I like it. Thanks, Sub and Caboose. Appreciate it. A 4/4 trample for 5 is fine, but drawing a card is just phenomenal. This is a huge creature, card advantage, just so good. Just such a good common. Probably the best green common. I'm not confident enough to say that with absolute authority, but I'll be first picking this card as often as possible in my Bronze Mythic series for limited in this set. And it's also a freaking Owlbear, which is hilarious. So I like it. Plummet. It's a sideboard card that kills flyers. Next question. Prosperos Innkeeper. This card is much better than it looks. This is a wily goblin and a soul warden stapled together and as a much easier to cast card. Wily goblins obviously seen play before. Soul wardens seen play. This card's good. You know, there's some life gain stuff happening in standard. This is the linchpin of the life gain deck if you're playing that draft archetype in draft. This card is really, really good. It's definitely not Edgewall Innkeeper, but that's a good thing. But yeah, it's also a freaking hobbit. He's inviting you in to stay at his inn. That's really, really cool. I want to say the Green Dragon, or not the Green Dragon, the Prancing Pony. I want to say the Prancing Pony. Sounds great. Yeah, so constructed role player, limited card, limited role player kind of too, honestly. But I think this card is like fine and limited anyway, honestly. Like Wily Goblin isn't that bad. It gains some life too. Solid card. Solid card. Up next is Purple Worm. 7 mana for a 8/7. This creature costs 2 less to cast if a creature died this turn. Ward 2. This card is a freaking chonker.
Oh my god, Becky.
Chonker. Blocking is going to suck if you play against a green deck. Turn 5 rolls around, your opponent attacks you, you probably shouldn't block. Because if this thing comes down, you are in big trouble. 8/7, no trample, but Ward 2 is obviously great because a lot of the things that kill it cost like 4 or 5 anyway. Yeah, this is probably one of the best green uncommons. Oh boy. Yeah, this is a honkin' chonker for sure. Definitely not going to be a card that'll see play constructed probably, but as far as limited goes, this is a mythic uncommon as far as I'm concerned. Totally busted. Purple Worm. Ranger class. Oops. Really, really close to best in show. Really, really close. So close. And I'm very, very aware that I might be wrong about this. I think this card is phenomenally good. Really, really, really good. 2 mana for enchantment. Chapter 1's make it 2/2. So you're already getting a 2/2 for 2 mana. Base level, that's it. Which is very, very solid with everything else happening. Level 2 is 2 mana. Whenever you attack, put a counter on attacking creature. Which is very good, honestly. It's a good mana sink. It's a fine ability to have. It scales up pretty well. Impressive. Chapter 3 is the passive on Vivian. You can look at the top card of your library anytime. You can cast creature spells from the top of your library. That's also really good. So this card is a 2-drop. It's a mana sink. And late in the game, it's an engine. I think this card's phenomenally good. And I'm regretting not making it best in show a little bit. I think this card is extremely playable. Post-rotation when Stomp is gone, it gets even better. But it's also an enchantment, which is cool. You can bounce it with Yorion. Like, there's a lot of things that happen with this card. Really, really good card. Very, very impressive. You're going to see a lot of this card in the next 2 years. The thing is that, although it's expensive to get all the way through the whole thing, a lot of games you're never going to get to level 3, and that's fine. Like, you have a 2/2 for 2, and then the potential for a whole bunch more, and even the second level is really good too. So, and then decks flood. You know, things don't go as planned, you're a little flooded. Well, now you have this insane enchantment that can just pop off cards like crazy. So, cards really, really good. Absolutely busted in limited. Like, gotta be one of the best rares except for limited, because you're going to get to that level 3, and the level 2 matters a lot too. So, cards really, really good. Just phenomenal in everything. Standard, limited, super, super good card. Up next is Ranger's Longbow. 2-mana equipment. +2/+1 and reach, equipped for 3. Not about it. Not about it. Without the synergy stuff for equipments, it's pretty unexciting. And then +2/+1 for equip 3 is just not very good. If you're desperate for a way to stop graveyards, or stop flyers or whatever, I guess, but this card's very clunky and very unexciting. Scaled Herbalist, 1/3 for 2. Tap, put a land into play. We've seen this card before. It was Dryad Greenseeker, I believe. And I think this card could have a place if there's some sort of crazy like Turbo Land deck. But the conditions necessary for this card to be good are exceedingly high. Without doing a lot of work, this will probably never put more than 1 land into play. And that's not good enough. That's not good enough at all. So, not super exciting. Need a lot of card draw to make this card good. Maybe it's some sort of like blue-green deck in limited. If you're drawing cards, this card could be kind of cool. It's obviously a 1/3, which is reasonable, but not a very exciting card. It's not going to play out as well as it looks, honestly. So, Spoils of the Hunt. The meta for an instant. Target you control gets +1 until end of turn for each mana from a treasure that was spent to cast a spell. That creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. I thought the treasure mechanic was only in red and black. It's kind of weird, honestly. Kind of weird. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously just like a 3-mana Rabid Bite or whatever, which is like totally fine regardless. Probably a pretty high pick. I don't get the treasure thing, honestly. It doesn't really make sense to me. But, yeah, I mean, obviously at 3 mana, this is worse than Ram Through, which costs 2, but it's screen removal. It's fine. You know, being an instance is very important also. So, good draft common. A lot of words on there don't necessarily matter for that much, but very good common. Up next is Sylvan Shepherd. 2/3 for 3. Vigilance. Over attacks, you gain 1, or you gain 2, or you gain 5. So it's going to gain like, what, 1.7 life, 1.6 life, something like that. That's not very good. And the thing is that the die roll stuff is mostly contained in blue and red. So this card would be good if it was a red card because it can cheaply trigger your die roll stuff over and over again. But in green, I don't get it. These last 2 cards don't make any sense to me. Usually the archetype cards are very specific to their colors. And these are just like both off-color archetype cards. But yeah, all right, sure. I don't really get it. This card's pretty middling. The Terrasque. Now, apparently this is a really, really sore subject for D&D players. Because apparently the Terrasque is like the ultimate D&D creature. And this card kind of sucks. Green, 6. So 9 mana for a legendary dinosaur. It's 10/10 with no evasion. If you cast it, it has haste and ward 10, which is pretty good. And whenever it attacks, it fights a creature defending player controls. It's supposed to be the ultimate death machine. Is it? Because I'm not really getting that, you know? It's supposed to be Godzilla in D&D. Yeah, I mean, like, obviously if you're casting this card, it is pretty good. A 10/10 haster. It kills creatures. It's got war. It's got haste. But, yeah, I mean, I don't imagine anyone ever casting this card. It's like, to be totally honest, you know? And it's only good if you cast it. So, yeah. Yeah, and then in limited, if your deck can make 9 mana, you'll win the game. But 9 mana is an unbelievable amount. Yeah. The uncommon 8/7 word is much better. Yeah. I don't know, folks. Yeah. What are you going to do? Underdark Basilisk. 1/2 death touch for 2. If you need a blocker, does the job in limited. That's really it, basically. You know, I've liked the 1/1 death touchers for 1 unlimited. This is a little worse than that, but it's also good with the fight card too, so, or the damage card. Varus, Silvery Moon Ranger. Green 1 for a 3/3. What's this? A ranger? I'm using nerd too much. Legendary creature, human elf ranger, reach ward 1. Whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, for the first time this turn, venture. And then if you complete the dungeon, make it 2/2. Phenomenal limited card. Just phenomenal. A 3/3 reach ward 1 for 3 is already there on rate. Then you get to venture every turn, which is insane. Then you get 2/2s when you venture. Bonkers limited card. Like, off the charts good. Constructed, this card is reasonable. This card was in our venture deck constructed. The fact it doesn't trigger off itself is kind of annoying, but it's certainly reasonable. Not amazing or anything, but it's just a solid card. This probably is the kind of card that's just not good enough for constructed, but busted and limited. So that is what it is. Wandering Troubadour, Dragon Bard. This just looks ridiculous to me. As someone who does not play D&D or know anything about D&D, there's a freaking dragon playing air guitar. I don't even know what's happening anymore. Or not air guitar, real guitar. I don't know. Whatever. 4/2. Beginning of your end step, if you had a land enter the battlefield under your control this turn, venture into a dungeon. Now, the card's really freaking good, though. Very good draft card. It's sort of like a landfall, like Irish Tracker venture card. So real good draft card. Just really good. But aside from that, not really. Listen, if a dragon wants to play guitar, I'm not gonna like hate on the dragon for playing guitar. Just play guitar. It's great. Do whatever you do. What makes you happy. All right. I'm as long as my biggest thing is I want to see people happy. You know. So that dragon looks super happy. I'm super happy. All right. And the card's really good and limited. So there we go. Our next card is Werewolf Pack Leader. Our best in show. It's so close with this and the Ranger enchantment, but I think that Werewolf Pack Leader is a little better on average and as a higher upside for cheaper cost. This card is really freaking good. Green for a 3/3 is already almost all the way there. And then, of course, it has the ability to be a 5/3 trample, which is also kind of reasonable. But pack tactics here is to draw a card. That is everything an aggro deck wants, is an aggressive creature that's well costed, that can keep the velocity going, keep the card draw going, draw some cards, so that if your opponent is able to wrath you or whatever, you still got cards going on, you know? And that's really important. We played a deck built around this card in 10 New Brews. We had 3/3 hasters and things like that to make sure we could draw a card on the next possible turn. And yeah, I think this card's awesome. It's really good. The only major downside to this card is the fact that it costs green in a format with no true dual lands. Because the best dual in the format, the best duels in the format are Pathways and are Fable Passage. And both those can only get a Forest for this to cast it and not play a different colored card later. Because I think you probably want to have this card in your red-green deck, but the mana's a little rough. But mono green is great. Gruul is possible. Card's just really good. It's huge on rate. The card's great. It's not much to say, honestly. Great limited card. Just so good. Moving on. I put the song again. No! More jams. Moving on. Wild Shape. 1 green. Instant. Choose one. To end a turn, target or you control that has base power and toughness becomes that creature type. What? To end a turn, target or you control has that base power and toughness. Oh, choose one. Okay, sure. Becomes that creature type, begins an ability. Okay. So I just worded really peculiarly. So basically, make your creature into a 1/3, a 1/5, or a 3/3. And I believe this would be chosen on cast, not on resolution. Sorry, my bad. So this is like a really weird card. It's sort of like a hexproof card, and it's also like a sort of giant growth for your very small creatures. This card is just bad. Like the 1/3 and the 1/5 aren't winning any combats at all, and a 3/3 is only good if you're like sizing up your 1/1 or 2/2. If this could target your opponent's things, I think this card would be reasonable. As it stands, though, this card just sucks. Honestly, like I don't think this card's good at all. I am very big on one mana tricks, and this can just like save your creature or whatever, or like give a thing reach and block. But the thing is, like, your 1/5 spider probably isn't killing anything either. So yeah, this card's pretty bad. Not about it. Not about it at all. If you're playing constructed, just play freaking Snakeskin Veil. If you're playing limited, just play a better card. You find a cursed idol. 2 mana sorcery, disenchant, or venture. This card is sweet, but certainly held back by being a sorcery. At instant speed, this card is main deckable, I think. But as it stands, I think it's, format dependent main deckable. I don't think venturing is worth a card, but making a treasure is also cool. It's funny because like making a treasure isn't worth a card and venturing isn't worth a card, but both on one card is like getting close to being worth a card, but probably still not there. But I think this card is a bit better than it looks. I agree, this is much more of a constructed card than a limited card, but there are artifacts and enchantments in limited too. So this card's cool. I like it. I think this card does just enough. I'm about it. You happen on a glade. 3 mana for an instant. Choose one. Journey on. Search your library for 2 basic lands. Put them in your hand, then shuffle. Or return a permanent card or graveyard to your hand. Both of these are pretty bad. This is a really bad cultivate. And then a really bad regrowth. And neither of those are particularly exciting. I think if your draft deck is splashing colors and you need to fix your mana, then you happen on a glade is like, okay. But all in all, I'm pretty unenthused with this card. And I hate regrowth effects. I think they are so slow and clunky and contextual that they just aren't good at all. So, not happy with that card at all. You meet in a tavern. Green, 2 sorcery. You can either look at the top 5 cards of your library and reveal any number of creature cards among them, put them in your hand, or all your creatures get +2/+2. So, the form of party here is, a much worse Lead the Stampede. A card that is borderline playable by itself. But the start of Brawl part's pretty solid and limited. If you're going wide or being aggressive, a mini overrun for 4 mana is pretty nice. Honestly, it's pretty nice. It's not quite overrun, but again, another spot where the modals part of this is pretty good, because if you're behind or you don't have any creatures in play, you can just cast the form of party part. So this card seems pretty good limited, honestly. I kind of like this card a lot, actually. I think I'd want to be aggressive to play this card and have a decent creature count, but solid draft card. I like it. And that's it. That's green. So you meet in a tavern, start a brawl, and yeah, that's green. Cool. YouTube folks, love you. Like, comment, subscribe. We got more colors. We got more set reviews. We got 10 new brews. We got articles on coolstuffink.com. We got commentary. We got tournaments. We got Bronson Mythic coming. Content explosion. All right. I love you all. Thanks for watching YouTube. Appreciate it. Multicolor is next. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.